What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Coach Black, your internet, relationship, and breakup coach. Today's topic, this is a key sign that your ex is silently hurting during no contact. Now this video was totally not meant to be in a lot of ways. Well, everything happens for a reason, but what I mean is it wasn't on a list of topics or subjects that I wanted to cover. And I usually do not talk about my personal life and relationships. Sometimes I will sprinkle in stories, and essentially that is what this is, but I never really talk about my romantic relationships. But it was kind of serendipity how this came to be, and I'm looking back at the situation, which I'll share shortly, and I wish I had this video when I was going through it, when I was going through all of the confusion, not being able to understand what was happening and not really having a clue. I wish someone would have sat me down or explained some of the things that I'm going to explain here. So for that purpose, I will dive into a little bit of my own personal relationship, and I hope you find it helpful. I hope as I explain this situation, as you see this key sign I'm going to talk about, you can apply it, or when you see something like this, you know exactly what it means. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. So something I like to do is I like to journal. I like to collect my thoughts. I journal every single day. This is my current journal, and if you don't do this, it's a very good practice. So find a book on Amazon, go out and journal, collect your thoughts. And the reason it's so cool is that I'm able to look back years and years later. I've been doing this for over a decade at this point. So I can always see where I was at a specific time in my life, what I was going through, what I was dealing with, what goals I was trying to accomplish. And so I was doing some reflecting, and I was looking back at some of my old journals, and I was going through my journals from a couple years ago. And as I was going through the pages, a picture dropped out, which is weird because I don't really store pictures in journals. But here's a picture right here that inspired this video. But I'm not going to flip it around to respect the privacy. But when I was looking at this picture, it's a picture of me and an ex-girlfriend. I think we went to some kind of, how you go to these gaming things and they have like the photo booth, you can take a picture, you do all the silly poses. And when I'm looking at this picture, there was so much joy, the expressions of happiness on her face and mine as well. It brings back so many memories about the beginning of the relationship. This is someone that I didn't date for a long time, but it was several months. And in the beginning, that feeling of when you're just completing each other's sentences, like it's almost like you have a spirit connection, like you've known each other for so long, and it's only been a few weeks. I remember our first date. We went bowling, and we were bowling, literally our first date, just kind of having a good time, and there was two ladies next to us. I can't remember if they were sisters or what, and they were bowling as well. But the way the bowling thing was set up, it was almost like, you shared a common area, right? There was two lanes and there was kind of like some seating. I don't know why it was set up that way, but that's how it was. So about halfway through the date, we're interacting and talking with the ladies, and we're drinking, we're just having a good time. And as we start talking to them, I remember them saying, "Oh, how long have you guys been together?" And we said, "It's our first date." And we just started laughing, and they were so surprised. That was the type of connection that we had. And I thought, this is it. Like, this is my person. And everything was going amazing. And couple months into the relationship, obviously, things started to change a little bit. This is before I knew much about attraction. I thought you can just show up into the relationship and everything will be perfect. But obviously I learned now there's attachment styles. There's childhood issues that people have. There's traumas that she's been through and I've been through, experiences that affect the way we show up into a relationship. And if you're not aware about these things, a lot of times you're just confused. And so things started to shift in the relationships. And I would say I'm more of a naturally anxious person before I learned about my attraction triggers. And so when things started to shift and we were going through the classic ups and downs of a relationship, I noticed the energy shifted. Things started to change, and I didn't feel like the effort was being reciprocated. Again, this is just clueless me years ago, and I didn't know how to properly handle that. And it's very hard to mask or effectively communicate those things without offending the other person. And so every effort I made to close the gap seemed to make things worse. Right? It's like the harder I tried to get through to her or to make sure that we were on the same page, things just didn't seem to work out. Right? And so anyway, I remember maybe about 4 or 5 months in, something was going on at work and things were really stressful. There were a lot of questions and just issues in the business, at the company I was working at the time. And I needed support, okay? I needed someone that I could share my experience with, kind of talk about, just get that little extra pep in my step. Again, it wasn't the way to handle it. I didn't know the things that I know now. But, looking for that support system, maybe there was some poor communication on my part, and I'll take ownership of that. But I remember while I was trying to address these things, she was just completely dismissive and, I'm gonna go hang out with my girls or something like that. And that was like the final straw, because it was issue after issue and I'm trying to communicate and it seems like things are not being reciprocated. And we're finally having the conversation days later, just trying to get to the bottom of things. And she's like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. It's too difficult. You're too insecure. I don't know what you've been through. You know how, sometimes your ex will use these very strong language that you don't identify with, because in your mind it's like, hey, we can get through anything. We have an amazing connection. We will go through the storm and all that. But anyway, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and she was like, this isn't gonna work for me. So this was one of the scenarios where I started to dig deep into my childhood traumas, my attraction triggers. Actually, that relationship was a catalyst for some of the things that I know now. And so, I started to learn about relationships, no contact breakups. I just dove into these things, but it was still very difficult because, again, I thought I had found my person, right? And so initially it was hard to get into no contact. I would make several mistakes. I would send a message, hey, let's talk. We can get through this. And all of the classic things that I tell you not to do. The reason I say this is because I've made all those mistakes myself. So I'm no better than you. I'm only at a point now that I understand how attraction works. And I know for sure that when someone is pushing you away, the best thing that you can do is to maintain your self-respect and dignity. But it's very difficult, especially when you have that soul connection. So I finally go into no contact and just leave her alone and walk away. I was continuing to learn, I was continuing to grow, and I knew that, I would be okay, as difficult as it was. Finally, when I'm silent, about 2 to 3 weeks after I go no contact completely, and I'm not saying a word, she's not hearing from me, no stories, cut off communication completely. Then I get a text message. And this is the key sign that I want to talk about. I get a text message that is very long, and it's expressing a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Now, what's interesting about this message is that even though there was a lot of blame and you did this and you never understood my perspective and all these things, when in reality, I always tried to communicate. I mean, I was not perfect, far from it, but I did try, right? And in a lot of ways, towards the end especially, she just was not showing up. But it was all the blaming, it's my fault and this and that. And her conclusion was still the same. I just wanted to say, like, we can never be together. And, I hope you have a nice life. At this point, even though it was only 2 to 3 weeks in, I didn't have a solid, clear grasp and understanding. But I did some things correctly in that I did not fight. I did not argue. What you have to understand, and this is why this is a key sign, it's so important. Usually when a breakup happens, okay, your ex is seeking relief from you. They're seeking relief from the relationship. All right, I made a video called The 5 Stages Your Ex Goes Through, and I'm gonna drop that in description so you can check it out. But the first stage, which is the most important, right, where you're getting all these confusing thoughts in your head, like how did they just leave? Why they look so happy? Why are they partying with their friends? It's because they're seeking freedom. They're seeking relief from you. Now, the reason this is a key sign is that now they're no longer seeking that relief externally. Now they're seeking relief in you. Now, what does that mean? Think about it. At one point, your ex was completely fine with never speaking to you again. Maybe you can identify with sending the messages and the texts that you shouldn't, and begging and trying to convince them to work on the relationship. And it's crickets. They're not responding to you. But all of a sudden, when you're finally silent, when you finally do what they've been begging you to do, now they have something to say. Now they have a whole paragraph to write. The truth is, they are hurting. They are afraid. They are worried that, okay, something has changed, and the only person they can get that certainty from, the only person they can get that relief from of knowing that if they wanted the relationship, you would still be available, is you. And so they send this message to get a reaction, to see if you're going to be scared, if you're going to chase them, if you're going to say, hey, please give me another chance. We can work on this. And as soon as you do that, they have gotten the relief that they're seeking and they are at peace. But it's such a key sign because, like I said, they're no longer seeking relief from you. They're seeking relief in you. And once they get it, they will be gone again. In my situation, I handled things slightly well. I accepted the breakup. I'm like, hey, I think we didn't handle things perfectly. I think we made a lot of mistakes, but I do agree, and I wish you well. I kid you not, 2 days later, she was at my house wanting to talk. Okay, it's a very interesting time. Needless to say, we worked things out, but the relationship ended up breaking up again. And the reason I bring that up is that I want you to value yourself. Even as we talk about some of these tactics, and I'm going to give you more specific examples to help you. If you get this type of message, I'll tell you what exactly to say here shortly. But the key is I want you to value yourself. The bottom line I want you to take away from this video is that you are deserving of love. You are deserving of someone who cares enough to put in the effort. And while you may have started no contact just to get your ex back, I totally get that. I've been there myself. You must internalize the mindset that, I'm only going to go where I'm celebrated. I'm only going to stick with people who stick with me, even through the worst of times, whether, a death in the family, things going on in your career, whatever the case may be. That maybe you stop showing up as the perfect partner, but they know that you're a good person. You don't want someone that's just going to quit on you. The reason this is important is that if your mindset, however subtle, believes that you have to always win them back over, all right, there's something in you that makes you feel like you're not good enough. And you may say, no, I know I'm good enough. They're just my person. Well, if they're not choosing you, if they're disrespecting you, and you keep chasing them, that means you do not believe that you deserve to be loved. And your beliefs tend to manifest in reality. And this is not just a spiritual thing. It's just your actions create the situations that you end up living in. So anyway, if you get a text from your ex, especially if you have finally been silent, you've been in no contact for weeks, you've not even been bothering them, they're sending this message for a reason. Okay, I think it was Yoda in Star Wars that says, behind anger is always fear. So ask yourself, what could your ex possibly be afraid of? Especially when you've left them alone. They are likely afraid of losing you, or at least losing control over you. All right, the battery died, but let's just wrap this up. See, there's 3 common types of messages that you're going to get from your ex if they are in a place where they are hurting, especially when they're trying to hide their feelings and not really come out and just say, I regret my decision. Text number 1 is you may get just a lot of disrespect, a lot of anger, maybe even curse words. All right. And remember, this is as a response to you being silent. Okay. Why are they doing this? Obviously, they still care. Now, you can take some hours to respond to show that you're collecting your thoughts, and you set a boundary instantly and say, hey, I do not appreciate you talking to me this way. If there's things you want to express and talk about, I'm open to it, but you must talk to me respectfully. If you can't do that, we can't have a conversation. Put it in your own words. They'll either respect the boundary and change their tune, or they will continue. And if they continue, you don't even have to respond because they're not respecting your boundary. You have to change the dynamic. Scenario number 2 is, there's no disrespect, but the overall tone of the message is still negative. They're blaming you for all the mistakes. They're not taking any ownership. And they took the time to send this long message, but they're still coming to the same conclusion. We don't belong together. This relationship is over. How you handle this is when you do respond, you can take ownership of some things. This is not an excuse for you to send a long 30-page paragraph. Just say, hey, I think, we made a lot of mistakes and there's certainly things I wish I could change. But at this point, I respect your decision and I really do wish you well. All right. And you leave it at that. What will happen is, again, they will be surprised that you're not chasing them. You're showing that, yeah, you're mature and you can take ownership, but you're not going to beg them to choose you. You'll notice their tone will change sooner or later, either right away or in a couple of days, like my situation. Scenario number 3, and this is perhaps the trickiest one, is that your ex will just flat out tell you, I'm hurting. I'm in a lot of pain. It's been so hard dealing with the breakup. And, I loved you so much. You were my person. All of these really caring things that you've been waiting for them to say for so long. But if you read closely, the conclusion is still, we don't belong together. All right. So they're only saying these things a lot of times to get that reassurance from you. They want you to reciprocate. They want you to start begging them. And they're kind of dangling a possibility of a future to see if you start chasing them. Now, this is tricky because you don't want to leave your ex high and dry. You want to reciprocate. But what you do here is you match and mirror. You can be kind. You can say, of course, I care about you. And I always thought that, we can get through challenging times, and I still do. But, I definitely think there were things I needed to change and that you needed to change as well. And at this point, it's something that there has to be mutual effort. And if there's not, then you're right. We can't be together. And I'm just going to keep focusing on myself. But I do wish you well. Something along those lines, okay? Put it in your own words. But this is a general framework for how you should be thinking about this. They are baiting you, right? Do not fall for it and do not chase. If you have any thoughts, comments, drop them down in the comment section below. If you haven't already, please like this video, share it with someone who you think may need it. That truly means a lot and it helps the channel out. Thank you so much for doing so. If you want to talk to me about your situation, click the first link in the description and we can talk about it. I look forward to seeing you on a coaching call or on my next live. Thanks again for watching. Peace.